can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video, we're gonna be talking about Immoral X-Men #1 by Kieran Gillen and Paco Medina. Actually, it took more than a few takes to not say Immortal X-Men. I don't know, man, the book was just that good. It's still living rent-free in my head. That said, it's the same writer, so I guess it wouldn't have been as bad of a fluff, but that's neither here nor there. What we're here to talk about today is Immoral X-Men and how Mr. Sinister is planning to get the Quiet Council to not kill him. The main thing to take away from this issue that I think is really telling of what the Immoral X-Men is going to be about, if the name alone didn't clue you in on what it is this comic is going to be about, it is very much about the X-Men doing some very immoral stuff. And not only that, but the title of this book also sends that point home, I think even better. It's a title that I think is probably one of the most, I would dare say, my favorite titles of any of the X comics that have come out since House of X. And the title is No Brotherhood, Just Evil Mutants. It's very telling, and when you open up these first couple of pages of the book, you're gonna see exactly why that title is in place, because by this particular point, we're still in the 10-year stretch, or what is often referred to as the 10+ year stretch, but all of this is taking place within the first 10 years of the Sins of Sinister kickoff. And what I like about this is that the Immoral X-Men are exactly that. We see that human resistance is still out there somewhere. While yes, there are a pretty large number of humans who are just like, yeah, no, we're in on this. We're totally going with the mutants, even if it's at our detriment. But there are still humans out there fighting the good fight. For one, we know Orcus is still out there, even if it's only the last vestiges of Orcus. We also know that there are still other freedom fighters out there, and it seems like those numbers are dwindling rather quickly because we see that Nick Fury has put together a team to try and infiltrate the Westchester complex, which for all intents and purposes is a building that I would assume is probably built on the bones of the old Westchester mansion, is my best assumption here, but it is one of the seats of power of mutant kind. And what the Quiet Council, or rather the Sinister Council, has done is they have put up psionic barriers and mental blocks, as well as some other fancy things, all telepathy related, to prevent anyone from actually infiltrating them. There's a point where we see Fury and his goon squad break into the Westchester complex, and once they breach the facility, one of them says, wait, do we leave by the door or the window? I'm gonna show some major. This eerily reminds me of multiple scenes from I'm Gonna Get You Sucker.
You and your friend got a choice. You can either go out that window or take the stairs.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna take the stairs. Yeah, we'll take the stairs.
But as it so happens, Fury says, no, I'm pretty sure it's the window. And they literally jump out of the window, plummeting to their death, killing themselves. And this is all because of Charles Xavier. Charles Xavier has been mentally manipulating anyone who is a part of the human rebellion. Something that even as a Sinister, he doesn't want to do. He's still broken-hearted by doing all of this. But that's just how far this version of Sinister is willing to go to achieve the dream. And that's something I talked about when we got to Sins of Sinister #1. I talked about how each of these characters, they're still themselves, just a more sinister version of themselves. And that was one of the things I talked about, was that I have a feeling that Xavier is still trying to achieve the mutant human dream. But in this case, instead of trying to do it in the ways that Charles Xavier normally has, this one's just willing to go that much further. And while yes, he does still hate himself for it, he is still willing to do it because he knows that is what he must do. And nothing really changes there. Another thing this book focuses on is Sinister himself, who is starting to learn that the idea of making the Sinister Council, that implanting his DNA into each and every member of the Quiet Council, as well as any other mutant who was resurrected on the island, it's all starting to come back to haunt him right now because he's learning very quickly he cannot trust any of them. Even going back to Sins of Sinister #1, he discovered that they were not on his side, that they are going to do things their way and not his way. And that's what he wasn't expecting, even though technically I feel like he should have known that this would be the case because he betrayed the other Sinisters at Bar Sinister in Powers of 10 number 4. Why would he not think the other Sinisters wouldn't do the same to him? Somehow he just didn't see the forest for all the trees, and right now he knows he can't trust anyone, not even himself. Even when he creates a clone of himself to talk through his problems with, he still ultimately kills that clone in the end because he knows if he lets that clone live, regardless of how unintelligent they are compared to him, at least at this particular point, because there's still things they don't know about what's going on right now, only what he's allowed them to know, he knows in the end that they will betray him just the same, because that is the nature of Mr. Sinister. But I love the fact that he's learning from his mistakes finally, even if it took him a while to do so. All of the things that he wants to try to attempt to do to get the Moiras back, he knows he can't do because the things he needs are in the secret lab that was taken by Orbis Stellaris. And the only way that he sees that he can undo what has been done up to this point and get the Sinister Council off his back is to get rid of them. And he attempts to inject Emma Frost with something, or maybe even extract something from Emma Frost. Whatever the case is, it's not gonna work out because, as we know from the Immortal X-Men series, Emma Frost has pretty much exclusively been sleeping in her diamond form. Now, one of the main reasons for this initially during the Immortal X-Men run was because her telepathy is turned off and she can, focus better when she wants to go to sleep. It's also because it helps her feel comfortable and more at home. As she says in that issue, Diamond is unaging. And it's one of those deals where she's just feeling a lot of different feelings right now, and she's just trying to keep up as many mental barriers as humanly possible. But that Diamond form has another utility now, 10 years from that issue of Immortal X-Men number 4. Now she uses it to keep others from harming her while she's asleep, and even is using Mastermind to give the appearance that she is not in her diamond form when she is asleep. And whatever Sinister was actually trying to do, this is what gets the ire of the Quiet Council, because they know that he's trying to get rid of them. So they're all trying to hunt him down. And what this ultimately leads us to, and why I brought up the thing that's gonna keep the Quiet Council from killing Mr. Sinister and taking him completely off the board, is that he is going to reintroduce something into the X-Men's corner of the Marvel Comics universe that we haven't seen since House of X and Powers of 10. More specifically, Powers of 10 number 3. And that is Rasputin 4. Rasputin 4, for those who are unfamiliar, is a chimera. You gotta go back to House of X and Powers of 10 to get some of this information, but during Powers of 10 we learned the first generation of chimeras were mostly just drones and soldiers. They didn't really have any wildly crazy superpower combinations. It wasn't until they got to the second generation of chimeras where they were able to give them more than one power set, with the first generation for all intents and purposes being little more than drones, and then the second generation being the first to be able to carry 2 separate X genes, meaning 2 completely different power sets. Rasputin 4 is going to be the first chimera that Sinister has created that can successfully hold 5 different X genes. Rasputin 4 possesses the X genes of Kid Omega, Colossus, Kate Pryde, the Laura Kinney edition of Wolverine, and Eunice, the Untouchable. To break it down in layman's terms, that means she had the Omega level telepathic abilities to be able to read and manipulate minds the same way that Kid Omega could, and very likely could even create her own weapons in doing so the same way that Kid Omega could. She could also turn her flesh into metal, just like Colossus. She could phase through solid matter, just like Kate Pryde. She also had a healing factor, just like Laura Kinney Wolverine, and she could create force fields that were nearly impervious to all harm. And that's actually a pretty big deal, because Eunice the Untouchable is largely considered to have some of the most powerful force fields in the Marvel Comics universe. Very few people, maybe other than the Invisible Woman, can stack up to him in terms of sheer efficacy of his shields. One of the few people who could ever reliably break Eunice the Untouchable's shields was the Hulk. She also possessed a soul sword just like Ilyana Rasputin, aka magic. And we don't even really know how she got that. That isn't anything that's a quirk of mutant genetics. It's very likely she was trained in the mystic arts in some way, shape, form, or fashion, and was able to summon the soul sword in the same fashion that Illyana could. Either way, this character has largely been absent from Marvel Comics since Powers of 10 #3, and a lot of people have been wanting her to come back in some capacity or another, and now, here she is. We've seen her in the solicits, but we never really knew exactly what part she would have to play in any of this, and now we know exactly that. She is the bargaining chip that Sinister is going to use to keep the Quiet Council from executing him for his betrayal. Because at the end of the day, Emma Frost is aware that they have enemies at their gates. While they have completely subjugated humanity for the most part on Earth, and they have already begun their expansion from Earth even beyond Araco, their expansion across the known galaxies is likely going to get the attention of what used to be some of their former allies, galactic empires like the Shi'ar Empire or the Kree Skrull Empire. And she recognizes that at some point they are going to turn on them or are going to see their expansion as an act of aggression. And she knows that if this were to happen, it wouldn't matter how many of their most powerful mutants they had at their disposal, at some point they would lose, and it wouldn't even be close. But to have chimeras, especially chimeras as powerful as Rasputin 4, is a huge boon, because as it was stated in Powers of 10, the 3rd generation chimeras were able to turn the tide against the man-machine supremacy, which is no small feat. Rasputin 4 and other chimeras like her could also have the exact same effect, and considering that this particular timeline that's going on right now with Sins of Sinister is eerily similar to Moira's 9th life. The very life where she threw in her lot with Apocalypse, and this is where we saw Rasputin 4 in the first place. And right now, Emma is willing to take Sinister's bargaining chip, the promise of more chimeras just like Rasputin 4, and using that as a means to turn the tide against any future spacefaring dissenters. So right now, Sinister is stuck holding the bag on this one. He can't get to his Moira clones because, for one, he doesn't know where they are, and he's stuck working with the very same Quiet Council that he has grown to hate. At least more than he already did. Now, does this mean we're gonna see some of the other characters from Powers of 10, like Scylla Bell and Cardinal? We probably will in some capacity or another. I could easily see us running into some of those characters, even if it's only a blink and you'll miss it situation. So yeah, right now, this is the big return I think a lot of fans were waiting on. I know I was definitely interested to see it. Like, once again, while Rasputin 4 wasn't my favorite part of the House of X by any stretch of the imagination, she was definitely a character that I liked, that I felt should have gotten a little bit more to do considering how much she was hyped up leading in to House of X and Powers of 10. But yeah, I'm very excited for this. This is really awesome. And yeah, I can't wait to see what they do with this. And I hope that once even all this is over, I hope that Rasputin 4 ends up being a character who hangs around. I love what they're doing with this event. This has actually made me even more hype for the #2 issues of all of the Sins of Sinister titles, because we'll be moved on to year 100 and likely seeing all kinds of shenanigans from Powers of 10. I can't wait to see how any of this is gonna ultimately wind up playing out, because it looks great. This is fun. This is one of those situations where it's a fun story arc that I almost wish was going to be a little bit longer, but I'm glad it's not gonna be wearing out its welcome the way some events often have a tendency to do. But yeah, year 100 is going to be amazing. I can't wait to see year 1000. I'm curious to know when or if Moira McTaggart is going to become a part of this in any way, shape, form, or fashion. I get this feeling that she's still out there somewhere, because a lot of the events of Sins of Sinister just seem to be things we've already kind of gotten a glimpse of in other timelines and lives that she's already experienced. So to see it all happening now, but with a slightly different bend, yeah, she has to show up at some point. But anyways, that's everything I want to talk about with Immoral X-Men #1. If you enjoyed this video, do the YouTube thing. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and make sure you tap that notification bell so you don't miss out on any videos that I put out. Until next time, let me know what you thought about Immoral X-Men #1. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.